Today I've come to Worstead in Norfolk. With a population of just over 1,000, the village sits north of Norwich and has a rich heritage in weaving, with worsted cloth even garnering its name from the village. But the reason for my visit here today is to look into the stories of its resident ghost, the White Lady, whose name has become so synonymous with the area, the local pub even adorns her title. It's difficult to pinpoint the first mention of the White Lady, however stories and rumours of her ghost appearing in the church grounds at midnight on Christmas Eve have been told and passed down by villagers from at least the early 19th century. The legend goes that on Christmas Eve of 1830, a man was drinking in the nearby King's Arm pub. Gathered around the roaring fire, the villagers told him the tale of the White Lady. In a bid to prove himself, he shrugged off the tales as nothing more than local superstition, and announced that he would climb the church tower and ring the church bells on the stroke of midnight, and that if he did indeed encounter the White Lady, he would offer her a kiss. Disappearing in the direction of the church, his friends waited in anticipation for the ringing of the bells, but midnight came and went, and no sign was heard, so they decided to pass by the church and check on his welfare. When they arrived, they found their friend, a gibbering, nervous wreck, cowering in the bell chamber. "I've seen her," he announced, before drawing his last breath and passing away. Was this the result of his promised kiss of death? Now, it would be very easy to dismiss the White Lady as nothing more than a legend based upon this rather fanciful tale. However, who's to say it's not based on some shred of truth? The thing that makes this ghost even more compelling is her continued sightings into the 20th and even 21st centuries. The most well-known report of the White Lady came when Peter, Diane and their son David Berthelot visited the church on a hot summer's day in 1975. The family had been holidaying in Norfolk and decided to visit the church to get some shade from the scorching sun. Mrs. Berthelot was at the time taking antibiotics for an ear infection and felt quite unwell, so she decided to take a seat in one of the pews to rest and say a quiet prayer. It was then that Mr. Berthelot snapped the now infamous photograph. Upon returning home, the family was shocked to see a strange figure sitting in the pew behind Diane, while all three remained adamant that they were indeed the only ones inside the church at the time. Mrs. Berthelot recalls how upon viewing the photo, she felt her feet begin to tingle and a warm, comforting sensation engulf her, something that she claimed to experience many years later whenever she viewed the photograph. When visiting the church the following year, Diane showed the slide to the late vicar, Reverend Pettit, who was aware of the tales of the White Lady, and she was, according to him, a healer who appeared when there was a sickness. It then hit Diane how her ailments and ear infections seemed to vanish not long after visiting the church on that hot summer's day in 1975. Now, if we suppose that the figure in the photograph doesn't actually depict a real ghost and has a rational explanation, what could it possibly be? I've had to think and narrowed it down to a few possible things that may have caused it. The first and most obvious of which is that it is actually a real person in the photograph. Now, everyone present at the time says that they were indeed alone in the church. However, I'm very well aware on previous investigations that your memory can be very deceiving. This has happened before, where I believe events happened in a certain way, and you watch back, and with the luxury of video cameras nowadays, you can review footage, and sometimes things happen completely different to how you remember. So it could actually be that there was someone in the church with them at the time, but no one has any recollection of it. The second of which, and I highly doubt this, is that the photograph is a fraud. Now, I really can't see what anybody would benefit from a fraudulent photograph such as this. It's everyone seems very honest. They've got nothing to gain other than some notoriety, but none of them seem to have benefited from this notoriety either. So I do doubt the fact that it's intentionally fraudulent. And the third option, which I think is probably the most likely, is it some kind of camera malfunction or double exposure. Now, double exposure occurs where light is captured by the camera and it can catch two images together and they're overlaid. This was a fairly common thing with old cameras using film. You don't have it happen nowadays with digital cameras and digital methods of taking photographs, but I think this is potentially one of the likely options. There is, of course, a variety of other camera malfunctions that may happen. There may be an old image, maybe it's recycled film, and there's still an old image burned into the film that is appearing in a spectral form in that way. But the thing I do find most interesting is the apparent attire that the ghost or the White Lady is wearing. It does indeed look like she's got a bonnet on her head. And going back to if there was a real person in the church, if someone was dressed in a slightly obscure fashion, that is something that people would recollect. If it was just a normal person in there and, very common or garden clothing, they may brush them off and not remember it. But if there's someone distinctly looking, that's something you would remember, which makes me think there wasn't anyone present when the photograph was taken. The only other thing I can think of, and it goes back to camera glitch or camera malfunction, is that there are a number of areas in the photograph that are overexposed. You can see certain light streaks coming from the windows that are overexposed areas. And the fact that the lady is glowing white, is it some kind of distortion with the light that's creating that? I don't know, but it wouldn't really explain why it's got sort of dark coloured legs and why it has very prominent human-like features. Sightings of the White Lady continued through the late 20th and into the 21st century, with all manner of people witnessing her glowing apparition, sometimes inside the church and others gliding peacefully through the churchyard. A man who used to run a fish and chip van on the village square recalled how he once saw the ghost while shutting up shop one evening. She moved between the gravestones before walking through the large doors of the church, where a white light seemed to emanate from the windows. This also follows similar themes from many other recent sightings. A far cry from the murderous ghost featured in the original legend, this version of the White Lady seems to be anything but malicious. Across the road from the church is a pub formerly known as the New Inn, which changed its name to the White Lady in 2011 in a nod to its ethereal neighbour. I think this name change goes to show how ingrained ghost stories and legends throughout the ages are into Britain's culture. With the many places I've visited over the years, folklore and local legend are still very much alive in the 21st century, and with moves such as the pub's name change, keeping these tales in our psyche, preventing them from being lost and sliding away into the passage of time.